Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Becoming Bankable podcast. My name is Christian Shaw. Today, I'm sitting down with Craig Hamilton, investor, developer, and advisor for real estate and small to medium-sized businesses. Currently, he is the founder and managing director of Urban Housing Development Group, which is a real estate development and investment company based in Huntington Beach, California, with over 30 years of experience in real estate acquisitions, developments, entitlements, asset management, and finance. So I'm really just honored and grateful for you, Craig, sitting down with me, giving some time and teaching all this audience about how you got your start in business and how that has evolved over time. So that's really what I want to cover today. So thank you for sitting down.
Thanks for having me here, Christian. It's great to share this time with you. Appreciate it.
Of course. So first off, right off the bat, just a little bit of your origin story here, Craig. How did you first get into business for yourself, and how has it evolved over time?
Well, most of my career, I have worked for other companies in the employee side of the business, and for some really great people, always in real estate. I left college and worked as a CPA for 3 years. And that was my start, which was wonderful because it gave me a little tidbit of what it was like to work for or to see how a variety of businesses operated. So that was, even though I really didn't like practicing as a CPA, I did like the opportunity to see how businesses operated. And somebody brought me into the real estate world shortly after that, from the public accounting world. And I ended up, and I've always been associated with privately held real estate development, home building companies through the rest of my career. Large ones, small ones, medium-sized ones, progressively smaller, right? As we moved through the years until I was, and for the most recently, ended up consulting for contractors who wanted to grow their businesses. Every one of those arenas has involved working with banks and investors and acquisitions, helping grow the companies, but largely financing roles as well.
So you started off as a CPA and under the corporate, in the corporate world. I guess, how did you take the step to create your own business and step out of that corporate structure?
Well, there was a big downturn in 2008 when Lehman Brothers crashed, and the economy crashed and Lehman Brothers went down. I was involved in real estate projects that were in partnership with Lehman Brothers. And it really threw me off the rails. It was a substantial loss. And it took me a long, long time to just recover. But I realized that I was interested in it's the real estate world. There's assets all around us that are available to be acquired. And so I was forced into it really in some way when the economy went upside down. And I realized that the opportunity was just there to find real estate investments and people who needed help in growing their businesses. So, and I enjoyed it, not being part of the larger corporate environment, which I never had any interest in pursuing whatsoever.
And so was Urban Housing Development Group the initial company that you started?
Well, no, Urban Housing Development Group is a relatively new endeavor designed to acquire small infill properties throughout Southern California, 2 to 1 acre to 5 acre properties, and entitle them and subdivide the property and build houses on them. And that evolved through consulting with contractors, really pairing up with contractors in the area who were doing similar things. And I really have found that there's a lot of opportunity in in every part of the country, really, but right here around me in Southern California, there's a lot of small infill opportunities, and I enjoy it. One of the things I've really liked doing is assembling all of the pieces. Finding a piece of property, bringing a design team in to kind of retell the story of that piece of property, then bringing capital into the equation to be able to move the property into a different place, and then bringing a construction team in to actually build it, and then a sales team to move the property into the hands of ultimately the homeowners. But assembling the teams and the people and properties has always been what I've liked about the business, whether I was working for myself or with somebody else.
Understood. Yeah. So kind of like catching up to speed to today, how has the environment changed? How has your business changed in this current environment? And how different was it from when you initially started to today?
Well, it's hugely different. It used to be that it was super easy to go, even though I started with a larger privately held home building company and we had offices around the country. And it was easy to go to a bank and say, we've got a piece of property and we want to borrow money. Banks would just throw it at you. They don't do it anymore. And I've had a lot of great relationships with bankers and attorneys and all the people that it takes to put the deals together. But the banks are under much more scrutiny these days, much more highly regulated. The money is harder to access and it takes longer to get. The loan to values and loan to cost ratios are much more constrictive. So in the small real estate world, there's so many other private lenders today, which we never would have approached in the earlier times. But now we end up almost exclusively use private lenders now and not banks.
And is that
not almost exclusively, but exclusively private lenders?
Yeah, so this is a completely different industry that I'm in. I'm in the business lending space, but I do have friends who are real estate investors and interested in getting into real estate investing. I feel like everybody's at least curious and interested in that. What would you say to people who are first starting out, like many of the people listening to this, in real estate investing? What would your recommendations be, or would you say don't even try at this current stage?
It's up and down, but I've always liked it, right? So if somebody has an interest in it, then I was telling a story the other day, and I think I want to tell you a couple of different things. Is one, don't let the perceived barriers stand in the way, because there's always a way to do it. If somebody who's just starting out might think, oh, I don't really have the money to do it, or I don't have the knowledge to do it, but there are people to team up with. And so if you don't feel like you have part of the equation, then team up with somebody who does, and split the profits or even work for them if necessary. But don't let it stand in the way. Just get closer to the person who's already doing what it is you want to do or the place you want to be, and then share time or the experience with that person. Literally, there was a time in one of the real estate downturns in the mid 90s, there's like a crash. And I thought, well, now what am I going to do? It's like I wasn't at that time working for anybody. It was in the time of the market cycles. And I found a foreclosure list, a real estate foreclosure list. And I just started sending out letters saying, I want to buy your house. And somebody called me up and said, oh, you want to buy my house? I mean, literally, the guy handed me his mortgage statement and says, just take it. And so I took over the property subject to the mortgage. And it's probably I felt I was helping the guy. He felt like it too, because he didn't want to have the property anymore. And it was a burden for him. And I was able to acquire it with literally zero money. And, that property is still around today, all these years later. And probably the most fun and the most profitable single transaction I've ever done, and it with no money whatsoever.
So would your recommendation be, just to kind of like regurgitate what you said, if you're just getting started, if you don't really have the connections or the know-how or the money or the resources, start with distressed properties, start with foreclosed properties, and and build your way up.
I mean, I think that's a way to do it. There's more competition in the world now in that arena. It's easier to access the information about distressed properties. I like distressed properties. I don't think it's for everybody, though. I think that the broader recommendation is to going to the trade industry conventions, finding the people that are already doing it. If you need a piece of property, I think foreclosure lists are fine, but even working through local land brokers, there's so many different ways to find the properties. But then you almost have to simultaneously find the property and the investor. If you're just starting out, unless you one comes from a wealthy background or some other lucrative arena, then teaming up with somebody else is really not hard to do. There's plenty of people with money in this world that want investment opportunities, and a lot of people come to the table with opportunities and say, will you invest in this with me? So it's like putting the pieces together. We have a piece of property now in Central California, and somebody came to the table. He's a land broker, right? And he came to the table with the piece of property, and he said he wanted to be a partner in it. So there's 3 of us in that transaction now, and so one person's the investor. I sort of operated the process, and the guy who brought it to us took a portion of the property. So that was a way to do it too. That was also a distress asset. It's a bigger one. It had 156 lots in Central California. We ended up building 63 houses on half of it and re-entitling the other half for 156 apartment units. And it's an escrow to sell to the land to somebody else now. So, I mean, that was a pretty good deal, but it was somebody who didn't have any money who brought it to the table, and we split it up 3 different ways.
Wow. That's incredible. That's a great deal. And it sounds like an incredible opportunity for this person who didn't really have the money or the resources to do anything with that deal. Like if he didn't find you guys, he wouldn't have been able to make that acquisition.
Yeah, but it's everywhere. I mean, it's sort of the way it works. It's people have. It's always about having the product. It's like, okay, here's this piece of land, and as long as you've got, whether it's a lender or an investor, the money always buys something. Lenders lend against assets. They lend against cash, or they lend against deposits, or they lend against properties or equipment. So it has to start with that. It has to begin with the property in some way, and then the story. Like and the returns. So everybody, I don't know at what level you want me to get into it, but it's if somebody has a piece of property and it can tell a good story and it produces a decent profit, then there's somebody that will add the capital to that equation. The property or this project first, I think.
It reminds me of Tony Robbins' quote about you don't need the resources, you need to be resourceful.
Well, for sure. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it is, even at the highest level, the first person I ever worked for in real estate, it was a pretty big firm, but the guy had started the company from scratch after he had left a larger publicly traded home building company. And he was looking for something to do. And I know he was sitting in an attorney's office, and he got 2 telephone messages, one from an investor and one from a guy who had a piece of property. And he said, hey, I wonder if I can put these 2 things together. And he merged it, and then it became like the 20th largest home building company in the country a few years later. But it started by putting those 2 people together.
Do you have any resources or people that you follow, or anything that you would recommend to learn how to find the deal, find the properties, make these connections, tell a good story about the property? Anything that helped you
Well,
on your success so far?
yeah. I mean, I was lucky. I worked with a lot of great people over the years, so most of it came that way, But I would go to the local building industry association has events, and you can meet a lot of really great people there. Whether it's in land acquisitions or sales and marketing or production, all of the components of the industry. I would start with that build, and they're all over the country. Building Industry Associates, BIA. There's also a trade group called Urban Land Institute with wonderful people in it. Everybody's willing to help. There was a book, an old book called No Money Down by Robert Allen, and it had all the techniques in it. If we just wanted to buy one property and do it, I think it's still, I'm sure it's still around, but it had valid educational materials in it. I mean, there's so many things, really, so many. And I mean, you live in a day to day, like you just, I tell my daughter sometimes, she'll ask me a question, I'll say, I don't know. And she goes, Dad, Google it, So it's like the answer's there. It's like, how do I buy real estate? And you're going to find an answer to that question. I mean, it's just the willingness to step forward and actually do it, So go ask for help. If you want a loan, find out who's lending in your space. You go to and I think it's true whether it's real estate or any other business. It's like, okay, who's doing what I already want to do? How did they do that? And go talk to those people. I mean, just literally pick up the phone and go talk to somebody.
Yeah. Go make
it's not harder than that. It's all there. I used to look at the newspaper for real estate deals, and then I would call, find the people that appeared in the article, and I would call them and I'd say, help me. And they always did, for the most part.
Amazing. Well, wrapping up here, Craig, what's next for you and what's next for the company?
Well, I'm looking at a bunch of small properties in the Southern California area, and the market has really shifted in the past year, and the new home side has remained strong, but I'm really looking for where the opportunities are to deploy capital now that weren't there a year and a half ago. It is a more difficult market. The banks and the lenders have pulled back from the industry in some way, in a large way in many cases. And I'm just exploring where those opportunities are, and, who's interested in investing in this arena and what properties come to market. And I just keep putting them together. I was out over the weekend looking at properties, and some that were really hideous, but not, and some that were okay. And it's just a matter of keep finding them until you find them. But truthfully, working for the companies that I work for and working for some great people have always paid the bills. But it only took a couple of real estate transactions to make a significant quality of life difference. And it was outside of the arena of working for somebody else every time. But it was like, well, whether it's one house or 4 lots or 10 lots, or there's always some small property that came available, that not every day, but every so often, that really changed the quality of my life for the better by pursuing those. So, I mean, I just love it. I think it's probably true in every industry. Combine the resources and find a property to have an equity ownership in. You don't have to own 100%, but own some of it.
Yeah, it only takes a few.
It only takes a few.
Successful. Yeah, quality over quantity is what I'm hearing. Well, yeah, I know when I'm obviously not ready yet, but when I do take the step towards my first real estate investment, I'll definitely come to you for advice, Craig. So I'm looking forward.
Well, do it now. I mean, why are you not ready? What the hell?
All right, let me go out and again, Craig, thank you so much for taking the time. And where can people find you if they'd like to connect with you in your business?
Well, Well,
They find a
on
good fit?
LinkedIn under Craig Hamilton, you can probably find me pretty easily there. That's probably the easiest place to do it. You just look under my name, Craig Hamilton. I'm in Huntington Beach or Newport Beach. I'm not sure where it shows up on LinkedIn. And then Urban Housing Development Group is also linked on that LinkedIn page too. So that would be the easiest place to find me.
Perfect. And we'll link down below on the description where we can find you with also all those links.
Okay, great.
Thanks again, Craig.
Thank you, Chris, and good luck.
Thanks.